So, welcome everybody. I'm so glad that you're here. If you don't know me yet, my name is Maria. I am a queer midwife and a parent, and the co author of Baby Making for Everybody, and the founder of Pregnant Together, which is the queer family building community. And we have such a sweet community of over 360 people all over the world, queer folks growing our families. And we do all sorts of webinars and workshops on topics related to queer family formation. And I'm really excited to focus on the experience of known donors from all different perspectives. And so today I'm going to ask each of our awesome panelists to introduce themselves and just share. So I'll ask you all, just share your name and pronouns and where you live and kind of why you're here. What's your connection to known donorhood? And then I'll ask you one more question as a little go around. And then we're going to open it up to you all. I've already had some questions submitted. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A. And we're going to have lots of time to make sure that, hopefully we can answer as many of your questions as possible. And if you're just signing on, welcome. We are recording this and I will send the recording to everybody after this event. So, Jonathan, would you like to introduce yourself first and let us know your relationship to known donorness?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Maria. And hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Rodkin. I live in the Kensington neighborhood of Brooklyn, and I have been a known donor since 2017. And in the years that have passed, I've donated to a total of 3 families who all live in the New York, New Jersey area, and I'm involved in the lives of these 3 wonderful families. Having had those experiences, I have recently begun a project called Sperm Donor Doula, in which I'm offering advice and guidance to people seeking to forge meaningful known donor relationships, because it's been really a wonderful part of my life. So I've done this advice giving informally ever since 2017 when I first donated, and I guess I'm formalizing a little bit more now. Happy to be here.
Thanks, Jonathan. Kenny, want to go next?
Sure. Hey everybody, my name's Kenny. I'm based in England, London. Woo woo. I had the wonderful opportunity to be able to donate my eggs to my sister last year, and so my nephew has now been here for 8 months. So it's very new to me, and probably the most wonderful thing I've ever done in my life.
Thanks, Kenny. Glad you're here. Mandy.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I was reacting to Kenny and the hearts are going crazy. My name's Mandy. I use any pronouns. I'm originally from the Bay in California, but I've lived in New York City, more specifically Brooklyn, very close to Jonathan for the last 8 years. I was raised by a single mother by choice. I also have a twin brother who lives in Seattle. So if I start using we for when I'm talking about myself, that's what's happening. Though he certainly has a different experience from me. My mom had us when she was 43. She had asked her best friend from college, who I just call, he went by a lot of more like a godfather by the name of Godfather, or biological father, but we'll just call him because that's how I refer to him. She asked him to donate sperm to her. And I always knew that he was our sperm donor. And although we grew up spending time with him, I didn't really establish any sort of really meaningful or connective relationship with him that I can get a lot more into later. I feel like I don't want to get too far into it, but I'm here because I'm a known donor conceived person. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mandy. Yes, we will have time to get more into it all. And I'm really glad that you're here. Janelle.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Janelle. My pronouns are she, her. I live in Alameda in the Bay Area, California, and I'm here because I have a donor conceived 13-month-old in the other room. So excited to be here and just talk about my experience with our known donor that we used to make our amazing little baby that we have now. And thank you for inviting me, Maria. Happy to be here.
Yay,
And my
I'm so
partner is
glad.
in the chat. So if you see them, that's them.
Jordan Richardson, we're calling you out. Okay, well, just to get the conversation going, and I think we're gonna start here, and then we'll flow, and we'll see what the audience wants to talk about. But I'd love to hear from each of you, like something that has been wonderful for you in relation to being a known donor, choosing a known donor, having a known donor, and then something that's been challenging. And let's just go the same order that we did before.
I think one thing that's wonderful for me is the, I guess, queerness of it all. I guess, like, yeah, the just the new family relations. Like, there's such a beautiful chosen family um path that I was invited to walk when I was like first asked to donate sperm to my friend. And then that's kind of been replicated across all three families. And it feels like we share such a unique bond that is like ours to create. And of course, as the kids get older, like they're part of that co-creation too. And it all just feels like so queer, um, which is really fun and really meaningful and cool. So, yeah, the family members, like we are family members in a certain way, even though the specific relationships can vary in intimacy. And like some of them maybe feel more like community members, like they're not in my life every single day. And yet there's a queer family tie, like nonetheless, which I really love. It gives new life to that old like saying of like their family, meaning like they're gay. So I like that a lot. Um, One thing that's hard is, sometimes in relationships we feel like we're failing, and that's probably true of every single relationship that has any meaning for any person. So there are times where I worry about coming up short and not necessarily knowing how to talk about it with either a parent or a kid in one of these three families. Certainly the kids are um, in two of the three cases too young to engage specifically, but as they get older, like I think those those worries of like distance building between someone with whom you share an intimate tie, I feel um sometimes like, yeah, it's kind of like I've chosen to add a bunch of those people to the list of people to worry about um living up to the standard of a relationship, and like having that, like I welcome that challenge, and I like love those kinds of, I love relationships and friendships in my life, and I welcome those challenges, but it doesn't mean that there aren't those self elements of self-doubt that have been kind of like welcomed involuntarily by this choice to be a known donor, particularly to multiple families. So yeah.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks for starting us off with that vulnerability. Kenny.
Yeah, I mean, from a selfish aspect, it felt really healing for me in terms of the relationship that I had with my body. For so long, I feel like I was told as a trans man, you have a bad body, you want to change it, you was born in the wrong body. And so much my, experience with my body felt like that. And then for the first time, I felt like I was able to do something positive and, something that's impacted my life, my sister's life, my whole family's life. And so, yeah, it was this surreal moment where, I just thought, oh, for a long time I felt this way, and I really disliked my body, and I tried to run away from all of these things, right? I tried to avoid these body parts, talking about them, hated periods. And then, I just have this overcoming gratefulness that actually, I've, in a way, it made sense that I was born in this body for the first time, and it gave me a reason. And so that was really beautiful. And I think the hardest part, if I'm being really honest, was it's just the biggest decision I've ever made in my life, really. It's such a commitment. I haven't even been in a relationship longer than 2 years. And so to imagine like, committing to this. And so there were nights after I had had my eggs retrieved that I was like, am I really doing this? Like, am I committed to this? And then just reminding myself that, this is an honor and what I'm doing this for and what it's going to mean to my sister and our family. And that kind of like calmed my nerves and reminded me why I was doing it, put me in a space where I felt more grounded and able to move forward. But it can be scary. It's a big decision, but again, best decision I've ever made.
Thanks, Kenny. Beautiful. Mandy.
Admittedly, I have a lot more challenges than I have appreciations. I think I've actually never been asked what I've liked and appreciated navigating a known donor relationship. And I don't know if I have an answer right now, but come back to me maybe in a year, and hopefully I'll have one. I will say I do love and appreciate what my mom did by choosing this like alternative way of like family building. She is randomly straight. But she was sort of queering this like structure and like queering her life in a way. And I think it did show me that like I can live my life in any direction and do whatever I want. And it doesn't have to play by the rules. That's a really big thing of what I've taken away from like being raised in this sort of like alternative family structure. There's been a lot that's been challenging. I would say that my mom and I had this a fraught relationship throughout my whole childhood, stemming from how was to refer to us, and this came up before we were even born, but after the sperm donation. And there was this sort of like nonverbal tug of war happening, and we never discussed it all together explicitly. Nor did we really discuss like the boundaries. And so it was sort of this unspoken rule / unspoken boundary that I, as a kid, had to somehow deal with and maintain without really fully knowing how or what it was or what that meant. So I think like had the adults been able to talk about it or frame it in a responsible way or model what a healthy discussion about boundaries and rules were, then I wouldn't have maybe had to take all of that on myself. And so this is all something that I'm like working on as I'm like an adult person. And you're catching me at a great time for this. You would have been hearing really different things from me about a year ago. But I think that was really challenging, was like being a kid and not knowing what the boundaries were, but still feeling like I had to uphold someone's boundary. Yeah.
Thanks, Mandy. I will just speak personally, like as a parent to a 5-year-old who has a known donor. I feel like extremely grateful that you are here and like sharing your experience with us. And I feel like there are probably many people who share that sentiment. So thank you. Janelle.
Yeah, I think something really beautiful about having a known donor conceived child and having a known donor is the connection and intention that's built. Like we were able to see this other human face to face and like have conversations, and like I think it just added a sense of I don't know, humanity to the process that can maybe feel a little more sterile in family building and like, okay, what's this next step? And so that was a really beautiful aspect. And then also candidly, like the accessibility of it in our situation was helpful, as opposed to maybe going through like a sperm bank, which was more difficult financially, I should say. So I think those are some like positive and beautiful aspects. And then something that is more challenging, I think this could be true for just queer family building in general, but like establishing legitimacy between my partner, myself, and my child is like we are the family unit. And then the fact that we do speak so freely about having a known donor and folks in our community know that, But then maybe to Mandy's point, like not necessarily knowing the boundaries of that. And I think having community members confuse parenthood and being a donor. And so I think that's been a challenge that that has come from that we've navigated. Yeah.
Thanks. I think that it's, well, actually, I will say we had someone, I know some folks came late after the introductions. And so I will just say Jonathan's a known sperm donor, Kenny is a known egg donor, Janelle is a recipient parent, and Mandy is a known donor conceived person. And Kenny and Janelle, if you guys don't mind adding that under your name tags, just if more folks come in later. And questions, please put in the Q&A so that I can try to get to all of them and sort them. I think this is a good time to ask, and this may be more for, there will be some questions I think that will be more for you, Mandy, and then others that are going to be, more for certain people. But how did, so one question that we got leading up to this panel is, how did you decide on donor involvement in the child's life, either from the perspective of the donor or the recipient parent? And then how did those expectations meet the reality or change? Like basically, like what did you expect going into this process? And then what evolved as time has gone on? Want to start us off again, Jonathan?
Sure. So the first person to ask me to donate sperm was someone who I was not in a close friendship with. This was someone I would say was more of a community member. We'd done some activism together. We'd got a couple beers. So it was actually really an honor and like a real surprise to get the invitation via email to consider doing this. And I lay out that context because I do think that like the sum of like the vulnerability in the relationships and like the fear of failure actually it's still there, but it's really reduced because that person and I began from like a relatively distal like type community member relationship, and there wasn't an active campaign to get me to sign up to like be a kid's uncle, or certainly that spectrum from like community member to like friend to uncle level to like co-parent level. I was at the lower end of the spectrum. And I do think that it, as such, the specifics around our donor agreement and writing out what we thought the relationship might look like in our future was both an exciting process because it was like getting to know each other from scratch. And it also was relatively like efficient and like boundaried because there wasn't all that much baggage that we were bringing into it. And so I would say we started from a like, let's agree to do this together. And it is going to link us kind of for life, but let's keep those expectations low in terms of responsibility, in terms of course, in terms of parentage, and also in terms of naming or, what I'd be called. We went with I fully gave up all my parentage rights, and that's the point of the donor agreement in the first place. But there was never any like treading toward becoming a family member in that first instance, in that first family. And that was a really wonderful kind of like open-ended basis from which to work. And it's now, this kid is now 8 and going to be 9 in November. And so it's like, we've maintained this interesting friendship, community membership, friendship, like, and there's a family element too that is undeniable given our like donor linkage, but none of that that's organically grown in those years was codified or even like really promised. And I do think that's great because it's we each had the kind of like wherewithal to like not promise anything and let it be what it's going to be. So that's kind of how it went. I'll pause there on that story number 1.
Thanks. How about you, Kenny? Was there anything that changed in surprising ways or that you wish you had talked about before the donation process?
No. I was really easygoing, to be honest. I just wanted to help my sister. It was kind of that simple for me. She was struggling with infertility for 4 years and had suffered with two miscarriages in that time, one in which she had to give birth. And as a brother who loves her, it was just really hard to see. And it kind of was a half joke when I offered my eggs originally. It was just on the phone, and I was just like, well, you can have my eggs if you want them. And she was just like, okay. And then we didn't speak about it for about 3 months. And she continued to look for donors elsewhere because she was really afraid of like me stepping back into a part of myself, which I really dislike. So it was kind of like a last call to even consider me. But it was just the right choice, basically, long story short. She was looking for donors elsewhere and she basically couldn't find any of Black heritage, which was predominantly what she really wanted. Um, and so, yeah, it was just, we just followed the process. Here in the UK, you go through implications counseling where they basically just go from A to Z of like what could go wrong. And I was just like, if I hated my sister tomorrow and didn't speak to her, I would still be proud that I made this choice and I'd still be happy with this choice. If she made a parenting decision that I didn't agree with, I would still be proud and happy that I made this choice. And everything kind of led to that answer. And so it was simple. And the only kind of request from me, which we were always on the same page, was that he has to know at some point. Just because I feel like he has the right to know. And that was my only request, and she agreed with that. And I've had the fortune to see her raise her daughter, so I know exactly kind of like what parenting decisions and stuff that she was gonna do. So it was kind of easy to me to make the decision. I think the only thing that kind of, I guess, threw me off was that I don't know if it's different in the US, but when you unfreeze all the eggs here, they do everything in one go. I thought it'd be like you'd go through singular embryos per time, like you would mix them egg and sperm together and make singular embryos. So I thought originally that I was going to be able to keep half of my collection, which then became apparent that I wasn't going to be able to. And that was kind of like what mindset I went in with. But given the situation that my sister was in with like endometriosis, thyroid issues, it was a very timely pregnancy, also in her 40s. And so it was just like, this needs to happen now, or it might not happen for her. But that was, kind of a decision of I'm going to have to go through that egg retrieval process again if I decide to have my own children, which was kind of like, okay, pause the brakes here. Can you live with this choice if you're never able to have your own children?
Mm.
And I just said, yeah, I love my sister. I'll figure it out later. So yeah, that was me.
Thanks, Kenny. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I know a lot of people kind of navigate like the donor choice and then like your own reproductive future, and that can be a challenge. Janelle, you have anything that you want to add about like how your expectations have and haven't necessarily met the reality of having a known donor?
Yeah, I think, well, for us, I will say initially, my partner and I were very much like, we're going to have this known donor and then build our family, and then that would kind of be it. And we didn't necessarily plan or expect to have any additional relationship with our known donor. And I would say that that's still been consistent, though I would say that something that I appreciated about the relationship that we have with our known donor is that he was very much like the where a relationship goes is up to you. Like he was like, I will never expect anything. I will never say anything. I will never ask for anything. Like you are leading where this relationship goes, which I really appreciated. And actually, this panel alone made me be like, hey, like maybe I'll reach out. And we were just able to share like, hey, like this is an update. And it was really sweet. And also like, we're thinking about maybe having another one. Like, would you be open to that? And so it's like this, I don't know, I think a surprisingly warm connection, like this warm, I think community member is a good phrase that Jonathan, you've been using of like, we have this really great person. So I think it evolved in that way. Like, I think we thought we were like, done, that's it. Like never speak to this person again if we don't have to. But I think it's a fonder relationship, I think, which has been really beautiful.
Mm. Thanks, Janelle. Mandy, if you, and like, I know I've told this to you privately, but I just want to say publicly, like, if there's anything that I ask that you're like, I don't really want to talk about it, just let us know. But like, if you could go back in time and talk to your mom and about like what you wish they had done that like would have eased the burden that you carried as a child around this, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I really like that question, and I've been thinking about it. Um, One thing would be like, I sort of was touching on this, but to discuss like what are the boundaries that we have altogether. I think I would have wanted my mom and her to like talk with us all together about what are the agreed upon boundaries, which part of the problem is they weren't really agreeing. But even letting us see them discuss it or negotiate it, I think would have been like a way to like understand the discordance between the two of them as opposed to just hearing bits and pieces from my mom. And I think it would have helped me feel like I don't have to be like the one to hold this like sort of amorphous boundary. And also, I think it would help me know whose boundaries are whose and make everything more explicit. I think like this has come up in a lot of conversations I've had is that like kids pick up on so much, almost more than what you say, like how you behave and how you're acting. And like in this situation, we all like kind of behaved or acted out the boundaries of the situation that were just like confusing for me as a kid to uphold or understand. And like behavior is sort of how we like communicate the unspoken things. And like that is sort of like a big theme of like this way that I've been processing and of like my life. So that's one thing. And then another thing that I've been thinking about is that I sort of do wish that my mom had been more explicit about our genetic connection with and how that translates to like a real embodied relationship. I wasn't really ever given like the opportunity to see myself in him or like I always knew about like the sperm and the egg from before I probably even understood what those even were. Like she was telling us like how we came to be from very early, which I really appreciate. But and so I knew about this in the sense that he like provided this material to allow us to be born. But there was a lot that was left out about like the relational piece of like, how does this translate to how I relate to this person? All I knew was sort of that like he wasn't our dad, but he like provided a material. And so in that sense, I think it resulted in sort of an almost dehumanization of him. Um, and and on top of that, like what I had learned about their relationship was that he had like hurt my mom, according to her. And so I feel like she wasn't often acknowledging how we were like maybe similar to, except for that my brother looks a lot like him. I think I would have really liked for her to like bring pieces of him to me if like we were expected to spend time with him, which we did, and it was like fun, but I was like, I'm hanging out with my godfather. Like it was so disjointed from the sperm and biological connection. And I think like doing that would have connected this like conceptual piece of like the object of him, of like the material that he provided, to like the relational piece of like who he is and who he can be to me. Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to say that like, so, you know, in Pregnant Together, most of the community members are queer folks, most have uteruses in the relationship and are growing their families. And I think we collectively like really love our children and future children and care so much about doing right by them. And I think that this conversation is like vulnerable for us because of homophobia and transphobia. And like I know that sometimes, like especially if there's a non-gestational parent, there can be like a vulnerability around who that known donor is to the child. And I think historically for some people, and still today cause us to be like, create distance with that person, even an anonymous donor from a bank. And I think that I really appreciate what you're sharing, Mandy. And I think it's like important for us as parents to soothe our own nervous systems and think about all of this from the child's perspective of like not reflexively pushing away because we're scared, but like creating enough safety in our relationships to let the child like have intimacy if they want with this donor, in whatever way feels right. And Mandy, I wish your brother were here too, because like obviously you have different perspectives, and we'll have to do another panel with more donor conceived folks in the future. I already know that we're not going to be able to answer everyone's questions, and I'm sorry. I just want to point out, I will name legality is very different across states and countries. The LGBTQ Bar Association has a list of lawyers across state who can help people set up known donor agreements. I will, after this, send out some resources for people, like for the more kind of nitty gritty questions. But I did see a fair amount of questions asking about like extended community. And so I'm curious for all of you, like, well, there are also questions, Jonathan, and maybe Kenny, I don't know if your niece is old enough now to, have a special word for what she calls you, but people want to know what the children that you donated sperm for call you, Jonathan, and also like how you talked to your families about this. And then, Janelle, how you talk to your families, and Mandy, also if you have connection to others' biological family and all of that. So Jonathan, I'll pass it to you.
Sure. Yeah. I think, I noted before, I find it helpful to just think of the known donors on a spectrum from like community member all the way up to co-parent, with kind of like friend and uncle there in the middle. And I'll say for one of the families, I'm squarely in an uncle category. And that's because I was close friends with the parents before they decided to have a kid and go the known donor route and invited me. And we began this collaboration. We were already close friends. And I am in the stage of life where there's a few other people in my life to whom I'm an uncle with no DNA connection, right? So that's a kind of like pretty easy one. Not to say that there isn't something extra special between me and that kid, but it feels like there's a template there, which I think it brings me calm to know that to be a good donor to that kid, I just need to be a good uncle. And that's not nothing, that's a lot, but it's like there's a template. And there's like less of a template for, I think, like down the chain a little bit at the community member level. And it's actually hard to find the language. Like I said, the oldest kid is almost 9, and I still don't, I struggle, like depending on the sentence structure, like to describe said kid, and like struggle to describe myself. The youngest kid is 6 months or 7 months now. And, her parents refer to me apparently in conversations where I'm not present in the third person as her DNA buddy. And they've shared that with me because I think it's really cute and like descriptive, and maybe like works really well for an infant and is like cute and then isn't cute anymore. I don't know. But I will say, just to be fully transparent, that family, number one, almost 10 years under our belt, like we like don't use any words. It's like I come over, we have dinner, we hang out, it's all very open book and lacking the right vocab. So hit me up if you like come to it.
I love DNA buddy. I feel like that is awesome. What about like speaking? Sorry, go ahead, Kenny.
No, I'm just saying the same. I love that so much. That's so cute.
Yeah, it's really cute.
Oh, sweet. Jonathan, did you talk to your parents before you donated sperm? Is this something that's like public with your family?
It's public with my family. I just wrote this. I actually was briefly writing this answer in the Q&A a little bit. So I did not speak with my parents before donating sperm. I spoke with them when that first pregnancy in mid 2017 entered its safer era of the second trimester. And I said, this is something that I've done. There is a legal document that someone paid an attorney money to help us with. This was the product of much work, but it was still, I think, a bit of a shock. Like, I did it at dinner out with my sister, whom I had shared with. So I had an ally there. And they were a little worried for like me. I think I put this in my written answer. Legal and financial risk was like on their mind. Um, I knew that I was pretty protected, and so was the person with whom I'd collaborated, the intended parent who is now carrying the DNA buddy. So I knew I was on pretty solid footing and doing something with like a long, long history in queer families and relationships. Um, so they were a little reticent, but then of course on board because it was reality and they're supportive of me as their son, which is amazing. And then in, family number 2 and number 3, it was like, yeah, this guy's doing this with his life. Okay, fine. That's great. We support and like I've said, in that case of family number 2, close friends, like the kind of friends who come to even like my family's holiday meals. So it's like there's an intimacy there that's like something that we can all grow together. And my parents do not at all sort of enter the conversation expecting to be grandparents to this kid or to any of the 3 kids, but including the one with whom I'm close friends with the parents. And I do think there are a lot of people like donors parents who I think struggle with some of those boundaries and like really do want that grandparent relationship. And if it's all gravy to all involved, like that's amazing, but that's not always what someone wants. So that's something to negotiate on the front end. So I will say, yeah, it's all open with my family. Everybody's supportive and also kind of arm's length in a nutshell.
Thank you. Do you have anything that you want to share, Tenny, about that piece?
Yeah, my friends were not surprised. They're like, sounds like something you would do. Yeah, okay, cool, fine, great. And so it was really actually kind of nice to have, yeah, this kind of bridge being built between queerness and straightness and people just to see it as a wonderful journey. Yeah, he's too young to have that conversation. Yeah, he's only 8 months. But the internet has called me Dunkle. That's kind of like for donor uncle, that's been the number one name. I've nicknamed myself Super Uncle. And that's probably what when I tell my friends and I talk about what I'd go with. But he's just going to be my cheeky best friend. I imagine that's what our relationship will be like. And, there will be, I'm sure, a time where he starts to understand that because he's had that conversation with his mum. And then I will probably have a bit of a panic attack when he comes to me with that conversation and we have to talk about it. But I trust my sister to be an incredible mother and guide him through that journey. And I trust our ability and our relationship to be able to navigate all of that together. And I think that's a large part of this process is kind of having trust. And I think to Mandy's point, there's clearer lines in our relationship, so it's a lot easier to navigate.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. How about you, Janelle? Oh, sorry, Mandy, did you want to jump in?
I mean, I can speak to my relationship to our family is that, well, as a husband who I've known since I was like 5. So he's also like part of this, but not in the drama. But he's wonderful. And I think because my mom and I were like really close for most of their lives, like his family, when there would be like events and things that like, like his wedding to his partner, like his nieces and nephews who he's really close with and his brother were all there. And so like I know them and they know me. They don't live near me and never really have. So I don't really have like a super independent relationship with them. I think that's another thing that would have been honestly kind of cool to explore for me. I know like when visited recently, I got dinner with him and his brother, who I hadn't seen for a long time, and it was really nice. His brother is kind of local. And so That's like a relationship I'm like open to exploring. But they were like kind of in and out, and like I know them, I'm familiar with them, and it was sort of like interestingly like less fraught. Um, but it would be kind of funny to try to explain like, why do I know this person? And I'm like, well, that's like technically my cousin, but like not at all. And like, let me explain this all to you. But that's my experience. And I think from my personal experience, I think I like the idea of having like more family, or like more familial, like family like people in my life. Like we have a lot of close family friends who I'm not like genetically related to, but like who are like aunts and uncles, sort of like Jonathan, how you refer to yourself with like all the friends you have. Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Mandy. How about you, Janelle?
Yeah, I think how we talk about Ethan is the name of our donor, and it's like a common household name for us and also for friends in our like close community. So we're like, oh yeah, it just our known donors is kind of like a household name for us. And I think with that though comes, as I mentioned previously, just boundaries with some of our extended family who, like, this is the first ever exposure that they've ever had to a queer family and what that looks like. And having to, again, like I said, like maintain my legitimacy and my partner Jordan's legitimacy as Dove's parents. Because our no donor relationship is not that there would be a co-parent relationship, and so to be really explicit about like who Dove's parents are, and so I think that's a conversation in a boundary setting that is like, it's not like a one-time conversation that we've had with our family, but it's something that like has to be revisited as like side comments are made or like just ignorant comments are made. So that's something that comes up a lot. And then I would also say in conversation with our donor, as we were like getting to know him, he was like, yeah, I've talked to my family about this. And like, I talked to my dad a lot about this, and like, he's totally on board. And like, there's not that expectation of like grandparenthood. But it was also comforting to know that like, he was intentional enough to like have conversations with his community about this and what that would look like. So there was lots of different conversations that went on, and it's nuanced, but yeah, I appreciate the ones that we've had.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that is important for potential known donors to talk to either partners and family members, and kind of it's a whole complex web of relationships, which I think is part of what intimidates a lot of people around the known, or I should say directed donor conversation. My colleague, Ray Rocklin, who I co-wrote Baby Making for Everybody with, is a queer midwife. And she told me once, which has really stuck with me, is like her perspective sometimes as she feels that using a known donor to grow our families, it does require more emotional labor for us. But if we don't have those conversations, or we choose, anonymous donors for the sake of avoiding those complicated relationships, we're sort of just like putting that emotional labor onto our children, and then they need to deal with that. We're like deferring that emotional labor, and so many people use anonymous donors, or now there's open ID donors, which is great. So it's like it's a complex thing. There's a place for sperm and egg banks. Like, we all need all these resources, but I think figuring out how to talk about the complexity with our children, no matter who the donor is important. Mandy, we have a question from Carter, who shared that they've read some donor-conceived people that regardless of how the relationship is embodied, they prefer scientifically accurate language. So father instead of uncle or godfather. They say my wife is a little uncomfortable with referring to our donor that way. I'm curious if other people feel that way. Do you have a personal opinion? I know you're not representing all donor conceived people.
It's so interesting. I've actually never heard that, but I haven't, I guess, looked into it past myself. I think like biological father is something that like is very like representative of what is for me and true and correct, factual, I guess is the word. And so I've definitely like thrown that word out there. I think I can understand how like it can maybe be confusing to give that name to the person for the child's sake if you're like that's not your parent but that's your father when the social connotation of father is like the parent. I could see those getting mixed up with one another. I think in my like where I'm at in like reflection, I think like it, it, it was helpful to explain to other people what my relationship was like with using the term like I would say like we I have a relationship with him like someone you might have a relationship with like a godfather or family friend or uncle because that is just like the nature of our relationship like in practice looked like. And I think that was helpful for people outside of myself to understand like just socially like what that might look like. I don't know. I don't know if I would. It's like there's so much baggage around the term dad and father for like that's like the whole thing with my mom and like her huge resistance to that. And so like that's still baggage that I carry vis-a-vis like the thing that you were saying, Maria, that the children now get to carry all the stuff that the parents don't work out. And so it's hard for like I just can't give like a yes or no or how someone might feel. But for me, I think father maybe would have. I can't even imagine having that as an option, and it doesn't feel like a true descriptor of the nature of our relationship. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Mandy. One of some of the themes that I'm hearing come up in all of this is like speaking to the truth, and the truth is layered and complex of like the biological relationship and the social relationship, having clear conversations and boundaries and knowing that those may evolve with time. And just like the impossibility. And I know that before I became a parent, I had an idea that like, if only I could figure all of this stuff out, then everything would be great. And then like my child wouldn't like really have to like deal with the complicated aspects of this thing. And that's just like not realistic. And as well intentioned as we are, like our children are going to deal with this baggage and we are going to make mistakes. And like it's just part of this human experience. I'm going to quickly say why I used the language directed donor, which is the ASRM, the American Society of Reproductive Medicine, recommended that we change this language from known donor to directed. And it's actually like a more of a healthcare term. It's like hopefully will make directed donation a little bit more accessible for people to get like fertility care and coverage. But it's like a little more of a scientific-y response. Also, anonymous donor is sort of a thing of the past now that people can take a DNA test. We used to have anonymity and people didn't really think about the impact on the child. But now it's unidentified is the more scientific term. We could talk about this for 2 more hours, but we don't have time. I will say people can reach out to me directly. I will put my email in the chat. If you have more questions, we have these conversations. Oops, it's caps lock. I didn't mean to yell at you. We have these conversations a lot in the Pregnant Together community. There are people from preconception through parenting who are navigating this like as it comes up. We've got support groups and threads. We're also doing a conference in November, and we are going to have a session on best practices for donor disclosure with two therapists. One is a donor conceived person, and the other one, like professionally counseled queer parents. And so we have a conference in early November. It's all virtual, and we'll keep doing resources like this. Before we close, well, I want to invite everyone just to like share any final things that they want to, that they feel like was unnamed. And then I also have a question of like, what do you feel like you have learned about yourself in this process, and whatever, however you come to it around your relationship with known donorness. And we'll shake things up. I'll stop putting you on the spot first, Jonathan. Mandy, can I ask you to go first?
Sure, I can try that one out. Yeah. I feel like I've been really learning a lot about myself, especially in this last sort of like year where I've sort of found in like an awareness that I'm carrying a lot that is not mine, or that was given to me. And I think that, I don't know, I think I'm learning to be like, I think I've just like really like unlocked a really like big part of me that was like, that I was not wanting to engage with or didn't have access to more than that anything, in terms of like a relationship with that can feel meaningful and not by obligation or by obligation. And so I'm like feeling very curious and hopeful. Yeah, and I think I'm still like learning about how this has all like affected me in the way that I approach relationships. I think that there are some really amazing things I learned from being raised by a single mom with a known donor. And I think I'm a lot more aware of those things. And now I'm gaining this awareness of like, how did this affect me in challenging ways, in the ways that I engage in relationships with others? I'm always, wanting to learn more about myself and explore these things. And so it's been very generative. Yeah.
Thanks, Mandy. So glad you were here. Janelle.
Sure, yeah. I think something that I've learned about myself, which I think just comes with parenthood in general, but is like this deeper level of humility that like having a relationship with a known donor and the potential of what that could look like is like for the sake of my daughter and for her. And we have maintained that like we will talk about him and she on her own will decide what kind of relationship she chooses to have. And I think in queer family building, you can be like, okay, like I'm going to create this space for like, me and my family. And I think it's hard to then step outside of that and be like, okay, but let me like think about this child and think about this human that I'm bringing into the world. And I think it just brings a deeper level of humility and consideration. So yeah, I would say that's kind of my takeaway.
Thanks, Janelle. How about you, Kenny?
I've been sat here the whole time trying to think of my answer. And I think it's just my ability to hold space for complex emotions, really. There's so much decision making and, as my therapist says, head heart and gut, and like trusting that intuition to kind of guide you, and trusting in your relationships. And yeah, I imagine there will be times where it becomes difficult, especially as he grows up and basically says, oh, my uncle is my biological mother, so to speak. I don't really like to use that language, but and that's a complex thing to get around, especially when you look at me, they're gonna be like, huh? Um, and yeah, I just think, yeah, the ability to handle it. But I think there's such a beauty in that. Like me and my sister's relationship has become 10 times because of the conversations that we've had to have to be like, we're doing this. And I think one of the really beautiful things that I'm really grateful for as being like a known donor was, yeah, we're just able to handle it together. And I still, like, my sister sends me messages, side note, of being like, it'll be a picture of her and baby Jones laying on the bed, and she will say, "Your egg, my mannerisms," and I like how I'm still kind of like included after, because I thought I'm gonna donate and we'd never speak about it again if she never wanted to. That was where I stood. Um, and I like that this is going to be a continuation. I just feel like it's going to be complex, but it's going to continue to bring our family closer together. And I think that's really beautiful and powerful.
Beautiful. Thanks. How about you, Jonathan?
Will you kindly repeat the question, Maria?
Something you've learned about yourself?
I think I didn't realize how exciting it is to just DIY life, And this opportunity landed in my lap. As I told you guys, like I wasn't even particularly close friends with the person who asked me back in um, fall of 2016 to donate or to think about it. And it was just like, I hadn't really thought about it. Um, but over these years, this muscle of forging something different from the template with which I grew up, which was like, to be honest, like so imperfect, right? Like it's not like the templates are amazing always. The opportunity to create something or participate, and especially like for me as a donor, like more in like a supporting role, like I don't have to carry that like lead for creating the space and the story, but I love this like integral supporting role. It's like so cool. And it's now that I'm like branching into this new era of like wanting to give more advice and like wanting to, I don't know, like spread the gospel of known donor stuff, I guess. I feel like it's given me the confidence or language or whatever to this is our lives are what we make it. And we know that as queer people, like intuitively in many ways, but it's like such a lived experience of that, and it's a cool way to live.
Thank you all. Thank you, Jonathan, Kenny, Janelle, Mandy, for participating. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. We will share the recording with people who weren't here. I put my email in the chat. You can join our community if you want to, or you can just message me. And yeah, I am really passionate about counteracting the isolation that many queer folks feel. I would say all queer folks feel throughout the family building journey. And so conversations like these are really important, and hope everyone has a beautiful rest of their day.
Take care.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so
Bye.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
Thanks to all of you.